Hello everyone. It's me, Arden Lee. I'm back today with another video, and as you can probably tell from the title of today's video, I want to talk today about how to feel beautiful. I want to get into why I'm choosing to talk about that subject today, but first, if before I get to that, if you have not done so already, do subscribe to my channel. I love seeing your notifications coming in. I love knowing that this material is useful to you. So go ahead and smash that button, and also, of course, leave me some comments about what you're finding helpful and what you think you would find helpful in the future. Some more topics that you might want me to unpack in future videos. I love hearing your feedback. It's super helpful for me to know how to curate my material going forward. So let's stay connected. Now I want to talk about why I decided to choose this topic for this video. I started kind of typing some words into the YouTube search, looking for how people were looking to feel, since I'm so interested these days in how our inner state really affects our external reality and how we can change our external reality via hacking our inner state. And so I started typing, like, what are people looking to feel, how to feel, and how to feel beautiful was one of the first ones that came up. Now, I understand that from many perspectives, I'm sure this is going to be somewhat controversial because, how do I say this? I've worked as a model, I've worked as a lingerie model, and I have, a body that when I put some effort into maintaining it is sample size, and I have a lot of privilege. I've got white privilege as well in a society, in American culture where historically we're seeing that shift a little bit now, but of course there's still leftovers, where historically white beauty has been privileged among other forms of beauty, in terms of the rewards that are the way our society rewards specific archetypes and specific looks of people. And certainly I spent many years capitalizing on the entree into certain circles, or the way that I could count that my presence was always sort of a gift if I made myself into this archetype of being like the beautiful woman in the room. And for those of you who've read my former work as a dating coach, specifically my book, The New Rules of Attraction, I certainly did my best to make all of those things accessible. Like, if that's the archetype that you want to embody, as much as possible, to be able to sort of hack that code, because this wasn't, while certainly I grew up with, I was given certain kinds of DNA, and as I've said, certain kinds of privilege. I have a certain canvas to work with. This is not something that was natural to me. I was not like the hot girl in high school. I wasn't. I was a nerd. I was a geek. I didn't even have my first boyfriend until I was 22. I didn't even lose my virginity until I was 22. So I never really felt particularly beautiful growing up. There were times that I certainly looked in the mirror and was happy with what I saw, but the results I was getting in the external world were not congruent with that. And I certainly, and even, in getting into my years as a dating coach and getting better at embodying that archetype, hi Virgil, something that is really interesting that I've discovered in the last several years was that there was a part of me that I was able to unlock when I stopped worrying so hard about it, when I stopped trying so hard. So I've had a pretty interesting and unique relationship with the concept of beauty as a whole, and the concept of feeling beautiful and or appearing in ways that are pleasing to other people. So I thought, why not get over myself and share what I feel that I've learned about this particular subject, if that's what people are looking for. I'm not going to sit here and be afraid to use my voice because of the way that I look. Even if the way that I look means that that there are certain privileges that I absolutely carry, that mean that there are other people's situations that I'm not as qualified to speak on. And also that there are privileges that I may appear to have today, that I may appear to have effortlessly, that are really things that I worked on a great deal. And And I think that the lesson from that, is that if anywhere that you're really dedicated to putting focus, will absolutely get you results of some kind or another. And of course, those may be proportional not only to your efforts, but also to the amount of privilege and resources you have. So I'm not denying that whatsoever. But I do want to emphasize how much of the way that people perceive me was very much directly a result of choices that I made and certain archetypes that I chose to embody. And certainly I feel that that's true because I saw those results when I was younger, and arguably, there's no way, there's no genetic way really, that's likely that I should feel or be more attractive at my age now than I was when I was 22. There's the mythology of society generally goes that we're kind of like bucking a biological tide at that point, and honestly, that's just like, I don't know. In my experience, in my experience, it's actually gotten easier and easier for me, and I greatly suspect that that is a strong result of my mindset. So, so those are the secrets that I want to share with you. I'm just going to be brave, and I'm just going to offer what value I feel that I have. And I'll happily open myself up to judgment of people saying, well, sure, it must be easy for you, or you don't know what this is like, or whatever. If as long as this video helps somebody out there to crack a certain code, or to hack something, or to somehow find a way to feel beautiful in a way that makes them happier and somehow enriches their own experience of life. So I'll talk a little bit about my own experience. And the first is that what I learned in writing the New Rules of Attraction and in taking on the mantle of the temptress, the femme fatale, the seductress archetype, I learned how much people are really easily influenced by the way that you present yourself to the world, and that I believe it was David Mamet who said this. I studied theater at NYU, and so there's like a lot of David Mamet that still stays with me. He's a playwright and a screenwriter, and writes a lot about performance. And he says human beings are highly suggestible. If you put someone on a stage and you put a crown on that person's head, they will believe that he is a king. And of course, he's talking about theater in that instance, but what I found, especially in studying Robert Greene's work, studying The Art of Seduction and the 48 Laws of Power, was that this really applied in a much broader sense of life, that you really have this body as your canvas to work with, and you have all of these, these different ways of styling and presenting yourself, and not only with your physical appearance, which is a big part of it, but also with the way that you move, with all the energies you choose to engage in. Even in my book, I talked about being aware of your voice. Are you choosing a voice that you find sexy or whatever? And in my book, my book was published in 2011, you guys. Like, it's much more problematic than, and in 2018, there's a lot in it that's problematic. And, I own up to that as just evidence of growth, hopefully, evidence of having evolved further than I was at that point in my life. So I remember saying things like, get rid of annoying accents. I'm from Philly, so I have no room to talk, so that was something that I did. But really, it's not about a mandate about what's right or wrong. It's actually just about empowering people to know that they have more control over the way that people perceive them than they currently believe that they do. And there's so much in our society, there's so much marketing that especially wants to sell to women, and men too in other ways, but especially wants to sell to women, you have to buy this or that in order to be beautiful. And in some ways, it's useful to have an array of products that if we use them and we love them and they make us feel good, they're like, they can be like these little power-ups, they can be like our little magic feather. But at the same way, it's also very disenfranchising to just keep being marketed to by a capitalist society that says buy this, buy this, buy this, and you need more and more and more stuff. And soon you're like surrounded by stuff and you're like, I still don't feel great, what's going on? So I, so looking at all that, but we still have all these options for what we do choose to use, to choose to adorn ourselves with, the ways that we choose to dress, and ultimately they really are about how we feel. I bought into for a long time. I bought into the lie of society that, like, wearing stuff that was specifically expensive or was designer was going to make me feel better, feel more beautiful. And there were times that it did, and then that allure wore off really, really soon. And I realized that actually a thing only has value to me, not for how much it costs, or even for the clout that it necessarily has by being a designer label, but by it actually has value to me and how it makes me feel. So surrounding myself with things that have the energetic signature of beauty to them that I perceive as beautiful, adorning myself with those things has always been that kind of little extra boost for my confidence. And once you get, into a place where you're really sensitized and you're really mindful about your whole presentation, you can start to choose those things at will. You can start to choose, even getting down to that nitty gritty of your behavior. Even looking at, I was so inspired by immersing myself in this archetype that even when I was a teenager, even before I was able to really give myself permission to fully commit to it, I remember, like, as a tween growing up, like, practicing my handwriting so that I had really beautiful handwriting. And I kind of love that I did that at that age, because now it's just very natural for me, and my handwriting is very, like, flowy and romantic looking. And I love that, and I love kind of what that says about me. And so there's all these elements in our, all these different areas of our lives that we're not under any obligation to fix or adapt or change in order to please people around us, which I think is the really important lesson that I didn't necessarily pick up when I was in that world. But we do have it in our power to change those and to adjust those and to adapt and to step into these archetypes that make us feel larger than life. There's so much that's so much more accessible to us as it is. And if we develop this pattern early on, that we're a misfit, or we're the ugly duckling, or we're the ugly kid, then we can really allow ourselves to feel like beauty is this, like, cool girls club that we don't get to have access to. And I want to dispel that myth. If anything, like, if you guys got anything out of the new rules of attraction, I hope that's what you got out of it. That ultimately, even though we all grow up with different patterns, and we are all given different conditioning as we're children, and given different beliefs about our attractiveness or our value in life and in society and in our peer groups, and even though we are also all born with different bodies, and we're all born with different sets of privileges, there's nothing that is keeping us from accessing the archetypes that call to us, and bringing in those energies and looking at everything that is under our control. Whether it's our appearance or our mannerisms or our behavior, or even, like, even our vocabulary, you guys, which is not to say, like, okay, go out and, like, go out and read the dictionary so you can be hotter, right? I don't want it to be interpreted that way. But I do want it to feel empowering in terms of choice, in terms of really making choices. Because if you're sitting here looking for videos on how to be beautiful, then I want to give you that if I can. If there's any way that I can do that for you, that I can give you permission and say, hey, look, if you just decide, if you make a decision that this is the energy that you want to work with, and you want to bring that on, and you want to start wearing things that make you feel that way, then I want to give you that power. I want to give you that permission to be able to do that, because there's nobody on earth who can tell you that you're not allowed to play with the archetype of being, whether it's the hot girl in the room, or whether it's, the beloved, or whether it's the romantic heroine. There's so much conditioning in our society anyway that tells us that only certain people are allowed to, be the romantic lead, for example. I loved the campaign, that someone started on social media, the Starring John Cho campaign, right? Like, why do we not see more Hollywood movies with Asian men in the romantic lead? And I think that all of that progress is really important, to start giving people more stories that everyone has access to know that they can be the lead in their own story, and not just the supporting character or the funny, quirky best friend. I think that's really important. But in the meantime, even before that becomes accessible on a society-wide level, I still want to give you that power just right now in this video. And I want you to know that you can look to any of the stories, any of the characters, any of the archetypes, the gods or goddesses, The even in many ways, the celebrities that we worship today, whatever it is, whatever that energy that it inspires you is, you're allowed to take that on for yourself, and you're allowed to adapt and change your behavior in a way that empowers you to walk through the world in a way that you want to be walking through the world. So having said all that, I think it's also important for me to make note of the fact that when I was really engaging in that behavior, there is one thing that kept me from what I feel was my true potential. And in weird ways, I feel actually like it is easier for me to maintain my looks now than it was for me in my 20s, which is a little bizarre when you think about it. It should not actually, like, biologically, there's no reason that should be the case. It seems like that's kind of almost, going a little in reverse. But I think what's really important is that when we really step into our power and our confidence, and we really start to own our gifts, then this really interesting thing happens where the message, and the work we're doing in the world, and the things that we're passionate about in our hearts becomes more important than other people's approval. And that when I was playing with all those archetypes and experimenting with my looks, and experimenting, in the dating world with what results I was getting, when I was playing around and saying, okay, how do I present myself, and how do people perceive me, and how can I make this even better? How can I make this more fun and more epic and more awesome? What I was doing back then, unfortunately, I still possessed so much insecurity and so much low self-worth from those early on patterns that I really was, in many ways, way too attached to the outcomes of what people thought of me. And when that happened, there was this sort of hesitancy, or this kind of veil, this almost like glaze over my eyes. And if you look at pictures of me back then, what's interesting is there was often sort of like, there was often a bit of a struggle with my weight. I'm not going to say it was huge, because I was, it was like, whatever. It was like a 10 to 15, maybe 20 pounds at most range struggle. So I don't want to be like, oh my God, I had this huge problem, when clearly, again, that whole time I was still benefiting from a lot of privilege. But like, if you look at photos of me back then, it's like, I feel like my body sometimes looks this kind of awkward, like either there's this layer over me that I don't want there, that is keeping me from my feeling like I'm in the body that I want to be in, or I'm like too thin because I'm so stressed out that I'm letting my stress, I'm like, well, this is making me fit this ideal more, so I'm just gonna go ahead and be stressed out, and I'm just gonna not take care of myself. And it didn't look healthy. It didn't look, that didn't look attractive either. And of course, it's not my body's job to be attractive for anyone, but I think it's really interesting that when I really stopped caring so much, and I just started being like, let me focus on actually just feeding my body and eating when I'm eating when I'm hungry, and stopping when I'm full, which again, like, that comes, the inability to know when I was hungry versus when I was full was actually coming out of the desensitization in my body, my inability to feel my body, and using food as this sort of like, punishment reward system, that I had set up, that was still me playing in that, I have to, do I deserve food or not today, or whatever, based on my sort of quest to mold my body into, the way that I wanted it to be, in order for the way that people were going to perceive me, or whatever, And so weirdly enough, when I stopped caring and I actually started working on my healing and working on how my body felt to me, I actually created so much more ease and so much more comfort in my body by being able to give it what nourishes it, and to just focus on, like, am I eating what my body wants to eat, and am I stopping when I'm good? Am I not, overusing food or indulgence? And am I not, depriving my body either? And that could really only come from that place of comfort in myself. And when I really tuned into taking care of myself first and foremost, all of my relationship to all of that stuff that I used to be kind of try hard about got so much easier. So it really is this balance, it really is this balance between, yes, you have so much accessible to you there is so much that is under your control with the archetypes that you take on, and the ways that you give yourself permission to walk through the world. And yes, people will, like, if you decide, I mean, shit, I was a I was I was a just a kind of clueless virgin for the first 22 years of my life. I was incredibly inexperienced. I was so I felt so much rejection, when I was in those formative years, when people were just starting to get their dating sea legs and everything, and I felt really left out. And I decided, I just decided one day in my 20s, I was like, I've had enough, and I'm just going to change my life. And I decided to brand myself as this, this temptress archetype, because it was fun, and because also that was kind of what society was saying it expected me to be if I wanted to, to be valued in a way. It's like our the patriarchy we lives in says, like, there's all these messages, be the Victoria's Secret model or whatever, and I was like, okay, like, I guess I'll do that thing. I'll be sexy, and I'll be alluring, and I'll create temptation, and then people will want me, and I won't have to feel so much rejection and abandonment anymore. And I feel like it's really important to this video that I expose the fact that I learned that that was essentially a lie. And what's actually helped me feel the most beautiful organically and has taken the least effort. First of all, it's really remarkable, though, that people really bought into the fact that I was a temptress, when that was not something that that I felt truly in my soul until I decided I'm really going to play with this energy and I'm going to transform myself. So it's important to know that, like, yes, you can do that. It's absolutely accessible. And I would also be remiss if I didn't say that the thing that has really helped me to feel the most beautiful has actually been just to accept my worthiness and just be like, no, I'm good as I am, and I'm actually going to look for the people who are attracted to me anyway. I no longer feel the need to pull myself outside my center or go out of my way in any capacity whatsoever for people who are, for the approval of other people who might not, who might not really be into me anyway. I'm actually, what I'm actually looking for are the people who show up, who see my value and who see my beauty just by being around me, and who don't need me to who probably could look at me taking on any archetype and be like, and anywhere along the timeline could be like, I loved you and thought you were beautiful even when you were 15 years old and you were a dork that no one in your high school appreciated or whatever, or at least valued romantically, and I loved you when you were playing with that temptress energy, and I love you now when you're in your, when you're really coming into your power, and maybe even like I love you the most now because you're the happiest now, and I want you to be happy because that's what it means for me to love you. And whatever you decide to try, whatever means you choose to grow into in the future, I trust, because I see your soul, that you're going to make those decisions for yourself. And if you want to transform yourself again and become something different, I trust that I'm still going to see you, and I'm still going to see your beauty, because the connection I have with you is something that that doesn't fade away, that is not going to be influenced by all these sort of outside archetypes that you may be trying on for funsies. So that really, for me, that's been the most transformative thing. So yeah, so those are the 2 points. One, that all of those energies are more accessible to you than you think they are, and that's why I wrote that book, because I wanted to bring that and make that accessible for anyone who wanted it. And 2, ultimately, those energies are not where your value comes from, and as much as you can allow yourself to play in that, in those fun archetypes or whatever, the people who really are going to make you feel beautiful at the end of the day are the ones who are going to see the person behind, the person behind the curtain, who's doing all of the work, who's doing all of the self-creation. So I give you that permission to empower yourself, and also to detach yourself, and do whatever feels good. Ultimately, do really, play with it, do whatever feels good, and it's really it's all within your range. It's all accessible to you. It's all there's so much that you can play with in that field of energetics, and there is so much abundance that you can call into your life. No matter who you are, there is absolutely a way for you to express your own inner beauty and what you see and what you value, and in the ways that you want to be perceived. So So thank you for, and I know this one was a little bit long, but I hope it was helpful. And I feel like it was important to unpack all that. So thank you for listening and for paying attention, and let me know how it hits.